Welcome to the Strategic Veteran, where we chart the course from service to civilian triumph. I'm Adam Peters, a veteran, entrepreneur, and your fellow navigator in the quest for a life of impact and fulfillment. My mission is simple: to empower you with the tools and stories that turn challenge into opportunity. Having walked the path from active duty to where I stand now, I understand the search for purpose that comes with hanging up the uniform. It's a path I've walked, with its trials, its tribulations, and its victories, and it's a journey we're on together. This podcast is more than just conversation. It's a beacon for those seeking to redefine our missions through entrepreneurship. It's about igniting the entrepreneurial spirit that lives within us, the spirit that compels us to create, lead, and make our mark on the world. Here we connect with veterans who have built businesses, sparked change, and found their purpose in the marketplace of ideas. They're not just surviving, they're thriving. They've transformed their service into startups, their experiences into enterprises, and they're proof that you can too. So whether you're scribbling business plans on napkins or stepping into the arena of innovation, remember, you're not alone. You're in good company. So let's explore these stories of transformation and take the first steps together on our path to purpose. Let's begin. Welcome back to another impactful episode of the Strategic Veteran Podcast, where we explore stories of resilience, transition, growth to inspire and guide veterans in the military community. I'm your host, Adam Peters, and today we're incredibly honored to welcome Christopher Martini, an accomplished filmmaker, veteran advocate, and storyteller whose career spans over 3 decades. Chris's journey began as a child actor and evolved through the prestigious halls of NYU Film School, leading to an extraordinary career as a writer, director, and cinematographer. With a remarkable portfolio including celebrated works like The Stone Child and Trooper, Chris has earned critical acclaim and theatrical distribution for his ability to tell powerful, untold stories of the human condition. As a founder of Triple Martini Productions, he continues to leave an indelible mark on the film industry. Chris's recent works include The Relentless Patriot, a compelling documentary on artist and activist Scott Lebedo that was showcased in over 1,000 theaters nationwide, and The Man You Don't Know, a bold exploration of Donald J. Trump. The latter, completed in record time, garnered over 54 million views on X after being shared by Elon Musk, cementing Chris's reputation for tackling complex and timely narratives with urgency and depth. What truly resonates with our podcast mission is Chris's unwavering commitment to amplifying voices often left unheard, including those of veterans. His advocacy extends beyond the screen with initiatives like an art therapy program for veterans, highlighting his belief in the healing power of creativity. In today's episode, we'll explore Chris's filmmaking journey, his passion for capturing the human experience, and his commitment to stories of perseverance. Values that align deeply with the military community. Stay tuned for a conversation filled with inspiration, behind-the-scenes insight, and a unique perspective on storytelling that speaks directly to the heart of service and growth. Chris, brother, welcome to the show, man. Thank you so much for being here.
Adam, thank you so much for having me. It's quite a pleasure.
Yeah, man. So let's just jump right in, dude. Usually my first question, like I told before we started recording, is where did you grow up and what inspired you to join the military? But for you, it's a little different. Where did you grow up and what inspired you to get into the film industry and ultimately become an advocate for those with voices that are not often heard?
Yeah, so I was born in Dallas, Texas, my mom was sort of traveling around with my stepfather because he was an actor. He was on the Rockford Files. He played Angel. He won two Emmy awards. But so my stepfather was flying all over the place doing films. And my mom had split up with my father. I spent a lot of time in Dallas, Texas, with my grandparents. I kind of grew up with my grandparents, and like my grandfather was a World War II veteran, Navy veteran. He was on in the He was a gunnery officer on a Liberty ship in World War II, stationed off of New Zealand. He had a crazy story about a pet monkey. He was able to keep a monkey on the ship that apparently loved the toothpaste. Apparently would like grab the toothpaste and like throw it all over the ship and everything. So, but I grew up with my grandfather a lot, and he made a huge impact on me. And it was the kind of growing up where like every morning he would go out and he would salute the flag. He would get the paper, and just the strictness. Like he was so regimented, and and his house, their house, my was immaculate. He just he had an effect on me, and so that's kind of where the veteran thing for me started. But I grew up sort of in a family in the arts, and I didn't quite appreciate it until things really started to change for me around 9/11. So
Okay.
when 9/11 happened, I was asked to edit, because I'm also an editor, union editor. I was asked to edit a documentary on Gulf War veterans, and just going through like hours and hours of footage of two things affected me. Just I was profoundly affected by that veterans were not being taken care of when they came home.
It's tough, man. It's a sad
I still, I
reality.
still, I still, I still get emotional when I think of that, because it didn't make any sense to me that they're defending our country and we can't look after them. We have to roll the red carpet for you guys when you get home. So but so on that level, I wanted to do what I could to fight for veterans, because I never served myself. But the other thing that affected me was just sort of, in order to tell the veteran story, you always have to deal with the combat situation of it. So on the one hand, there was like, medical issues, physiological issues from, weapons that are controversial, and sort of the VA denying the claims, and the labyrinth that the veterans have to go through. But then there's also just the hard reality of combat, which every military person knows when they sign up what they're getting into. But I had to comb through like hours and hours of really gruesome footage, and that was the first time in my life that I had ever seen stuff like that before. And so if I was having a hard time just watching footage, I couldn't even imagine being in that, and actually living that. So that gave me a profound respect for our military. Now, the next thing that happened was, once I started to fall in love with the military and veterans, and also law enforcement and first responders, but then it was almost like God thrusting me on a path, because the minute I did that, I saw a lot of the sort of the anti-war sentiment in our population, sort of the apathy. And so I think that might have politicized me a little bit, because I just had to go to the defense of these people that are putting their lives on the line for us, when people from our country aren't understanding what that sacrifice is. So that that experience editing that movie, and sort of my waking up, led me to make my film Trooper, where I play, I have a shaved head in that movie. I look a little bit younger, no gray hairs, but a little skinnier too. But but when I made that movie, I decided that I had to be the guy to play the part, because I had essentially done. You might hear my dog soon, also, but
Yeah, sorry,
um,
man. It's
no,
just
no, no, I
it's
love it.
life
I
with
love it.
dogs, man.
Yeah, yeah. So I realized I was the only one that could play this role. I also didn't have any money to pay anybody, so it was cheaper for me to actually play the part myself. So I played this guy, and it was. I don't think I ever bounced back from that film, because I made a lot of mistakes as an actor when I was doing that role, because it was hard, because I'm also directing. So I'm like acting in a scene, and I see the sound guy's got the boom that's coming in the shot, and I'm having a hard time because I'm also directing it, and so
Multi-focusing right there,
you
yeah.
have to be very like scattered and all over the place. But in order to play this guy, I had to walk myself through the emotions of what it would be like to lose somebody, a friend or something, in combat. And I remember trying to do these scenes, and I'm listening to music that is sort of gets my emotions going, which you should never do as an actor. You should never rely on music to bring out those emotions. So I was making all these mistakes. So it was, but ultimately I was able to put something together that worked on screen. People still loved the movie. We got support from like Bruce Springsteen and Bob Dylan. They each gave us a song for free, which has never happened before. And, so like, I showed it to veterans all over the country and, in schools, and people were like, "Oh, you told my story, man." And then so it became a thing. After that movie, I didn't want to pigeonhole myself and be like the military guy. And so I went through a little bit of, the military director. So I went through a little period where I just sort of distanced myself a little bit. But then what happened was I was like, I love you guys. I can't stay away from, so it kept coming back to me. And now I'm sort of embrace that role is that I still want to tell sort of the veteran story, the military sport story, the sort of the patriotic thing also. So that's how I sort of landed it. And I've done all these great projects since then. And a lot of my other projects after Trooper in some degree dealt with sort of the military or veteran, the reverence for that, for your community.
Man, chills just listening to you talk about that from when you edited that project from Desert Storm, right? So you're basically by proxy getting a little taste of those demons we get when we go to combat. And you're absolutely right, man. Those demons are so hard to shake, right? Like the impact of watching it on film versus having been there. I mean, there's obviously a large gap to cross there, but you can get a really good sense of that toll that takes on us, physically, mentally, and emotionally, spiritually as well, right? And those are the demons I'm out here trying to get people to understand, like the power of story and telling your story and what you went through and being vulnerable in that is the path to healing. And I think you demonstrate that well. Your career spans more than 30 years. And what stands out is your transition into storytelling, focusing on veterans and those challenges. So, how do you ensure continuity that you do veterans their due diligence when you're making films like this? Because a lot of us there's nothing worse than seeing somebody make a film and they get it all fucked up, right? Like they just like, I know there's certain rules, or at least I've heard, and I'm not in the film industry, but like with uniforms, you got to change things around because you can't copy or whatever. But like tactics is the big one. The big one that I just can't get past is like, you're doing these things all wrong and you're making us look fucked up. And that's not how we operate. We actually operate very methodically and with hours and hours of training. So how do you ensure you get that stuff right?
Well, I think early on I made a choice to be the kind of filmmaker that listens rather than the filmmaker that sort of tells how it's going to be. And when you're making you should make films about things you don't know so that you can learn. And then when you do those things, the great thing about making a movie is like you're in that community, and you're around all these people that have experiences you don't know anything about, and you have to listen, and you have to love that experience, as opposed to like sort of Hollywood that has this mentality of like, sorry for the military metaphor here, but like to roll in and sort of take over and impose their story upon that community. So it's almost like a documentary approach where even if it's a narrative film, you're listening to the subject matter, and you're taking notes, and you're building your film around sort of the experience that you're having with those people. And like, so I also did a film about Native Americans, and when I showed up on the reservation, I cast real locals. I didn't even use any actors, and I'm sort of like, I'm asking them questions, and we had sort of a medicine man, sage, and say a prayer before filming, and that's just the beauty of like making a movie. So I approached it the same way when I made Trooper, which was my first real kind of military movie. I cast this guy. He's now a friend of mine, Jerry Della Sala, who's an Iraq veteran, but he's also an NYU trained actor. He was in the movie The Green Zone. He was an MP in Iraq, and like I think he deployed in 2001, right after September 11th. And he's a great actor, and I hope Jerry listens to it. I'm going to send it to him. But when he thought it was pretty funny because I cast him as a civilian, so he played sort of my civilian friend, in Trooper. But Jerry was also the military advisor, and he was on set. He was telling me, because I didn't want to get anything with the uniform wrong, although I did. You'll have to see the movie to see my mistakes. There's a few like mistakes.
I mean,
Lori
mistakes are bound to happen, right? We're not
Lori,
perfect human
well,
beings.
when you're making a film for like no money, and you have no crew, it's kind of hard to get everything right by yourself, almost. So like, but Lori Renwick is my executive producer on that film, and she's in the military, and she always made fun of me because my boots weren't laced up the right way, and so it's like. But as I go on, I'm getting more of the details accurate. If you see my later work, I have this is something I want to talk about in a bit. I've actually trained my own I have a veteran film crew, and I almost train everybody. And these guys on my later stuff, they will not let me make a mistake. So it's pretty good. But back to what I'm saying, like Jerry Della Sala, he was on set as an advisor, and we were shooting these scenes, just making sure everything is correct. We had Jerry and I had a little bit of we kind of butt heads over. There was a scene, a horrific scene in the movie where I turned the gun on myself, and Jerry was like. He was like, "That's a Vietnam era gun. You wouldn't have that. It looks like you stole it from the base." Now, my argument was that my dad was a Vietnam veteran, and it was his gun. But Jerry was sort of like adamant about this scene. We kind of came with the scene stayed in the movie, but we had to sort of duke it out a little bit. But like but he was the greatest thing that happened was with Jerry on set was in the VA scene when he was telling me sort of like what would happen when you go to the VA. So I was doing this scene where I sort of unleash on the VA doctor, and my PTSD comes out a little bit. And Jerry was in the room when I was doing that scene, and I think that's the reason that scene was so emotional for me was because I was like looking at him, and I knew like the experiences he had in his own real life at the VA. So, it's just that's how you have to make a movie. You have to involve the people who lived the story. It's so funny. Like a friend of mine just texted me today. I won't say who it is because it's not important, but it's a sort of high profile veteran in the community, who's been in movies and stuff. And so he was approached by a big director, big production company, to talk on a documentary. And so another military friend who works with him came to me today, and he said, "Chris, does this sound legit?" I looked him up. It's legit. This is a big director, his company and everything. And I said the only piece of advice I can give to you is like make sure that they don't distort your story. When you go on there, like make sure they're not trying to just like take your story and spin it into something else, because that happens all the time. And he was like, "Well, you better be there when we're dealing with them." And
I think
anyways, that's
that's an important point that you're making, and I think that's sound advice because one of my favorite books of all time about global war on terror is Lone Survivor. But what Hollywood did with that movie, particularly the end, is they completely distorted that entire story, and they take away from the actual Marcus Luttrell's experience. Because it was much longer. There wasn't a big battle. They had to sneak him out, and he was drinking from like nasty water bottles and shit like that. They didn't highlight any of that important stuff to really capture kind of my notes here as I'm looking, right? Like my question to you is, how do you, like veterans do struggle to communicate their stories, and you have this unique approach to storytelling. It needs to be approached with empathy and authenticity. And so how do you ensure that we can pass that along to people who are wanting to make these films, who are wanting to tell our stories? I've even had a couple of articles written about me where I self-fill out stuff and then they still distort it and turn it around. And I've since learned, through trial and error, like, hey, this isn't right. Like, you're changing the entire premise of what I was trying to say about myself. What advice do you have for those of us who are, building things and getting these articles written and just trying to tell our stories? How do we keep that from happening?
Well, you hit the key word, which is premise. So premise is at the heart of every movie, you know. So I'm actually doing a screenwriting course that remind me to talk about that, which it's going to involve sort of veterans and first responders. That's something I do want to talk about here. But basically, a premise is basically something that you believe. It's like one sentence about life that you believe, right? So if you make a movie, you should have a clear premise and sort of like everything in that movie, every scene, every piece of dialogue, every prop, every actor has to serve that premise. That's the point of the story. So, if it's like, you know, truth will prevail, stuff like that stuff. But the important thing is that it has to be something that you believe in life, right? You as the filmmaker have to have a purpose for making your movie. You have to be trying to tell the audience something that you've learned, something that you believe passionately about, right? So if you're making a movie about veterans, then your premise should, in my opinion, unless you're making an anti-veteran movie, your opinion should support the veteran community. It should be something, positive that, like you could tell a negative story with a positive premise, the darkness to get you to that point of the light that brings out that premise, but like, it should be about something that should benefit the veteran community and not do harm to it. So I think my point is that if your premise is not in line with the veteran community and what they need, you shouldn't be making the movie. And I think that people that have these premises that go against telling the true veteran story is because their purpose is not to benefit the veteran community. They're either trying to make a movie that's just commercially successful, or they're trying to impose their political view on somebody else's story, or so you see what I'm saying? So
We're seeing a lot
I
of that in
I
TV
think
and
I
film
think you
now.
just intention, like so another veteran came to me with a documentary, and he actually put me on a call with another filmmaker that he was considering directing the movie, and I guess they wanted me to produce it. And I had to tell him, I said, you shouldn't go with this director, because I can tell that like she's doing more talking than listening, and she needs to listen, and it has no, sorry, I shouldn't have said the gender, because the same thing could happen. It happens more with the men. I'm just saying that, like, because like, look, Paul Greengrass is a perfect example on the movie that I talked about, The Green Zone. So there's a friend of mine, Monty Gonzalez. He was a ranger, and that movie was based on him. And Matt Damon's character was Monty Gonzalez in real life. So Monty was there as a military advisor on this movie. So they led Monty to believe that they were going to tell his story, and the final product ended up being something completely politicized. And he actually went on Fox News and spoke out against this director. And so it's all about intention.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's how to ensure that the story is correct.
Yeah, I think oftentimes probably Hollywood, the bigger directors, film companies, they're just about the bottom line, right? Like, so much of society today is about the bottom line instead of actually telling the hard truths about what we actually go through as veterans. You talked about the scene in Trooper where you're at the VA and your PTSD flares up. It actually brings back a memory of mine when I was sitting at the American Lake VA in Lakewood, Washington, right after I got out. And this older veteran just collapses in the middle of the floor, and nobody does anything. They just look at him, like nobody calls an ambulance, nobody, like, because they don't have an ER facility there anymore. And it's just, it's like these are the stories. They don't paint anything in a good light. They don't paint society in a good light. They don't paint what you're trying to tell in a good light. Like it's just the reality of it. And reality, unfortunately, I guess, doesn't sell or make money like they want to. So thank God people like you are out there actually calling attention to the true things that are going on to help open people's eyes. Like, hey, particularly this day and age, like I hate politics in general, but you can't turn on a TV or watch a TV show without some agenda, whether it comes from either side, be shoved down your throat. And it's like, I'm not watching shit like this because I want to be, inundated with your beliefs and what you think I should believe. I just want to escape, really. Like I just want to be entertained. Like I want to learn something. Particularly I'm on this big documentary kick right now. So for me, if it doesn't involve learning, I'm probably not going to give it my time. But if it is a documentary and you're trying to shove that political shit down my throat, like you've just killed my escape. You know what I mean? And so I'm so glad you're out there doing that and you're calling attention to these things. And for those that are listening, I think it's important, like, if you want to build something, if you want to highlight your story, take this advice to heart because it will happen to you. It's already happened to me. Nothing, that I can't recover from or whatever, because I'm still like, I'm not in the stratosphere yet, right? Like I'm still in these little, little canvas rebels and whatnot, like writing articles about me. But I know there's a time that's going to come, and now I'm aware of them trying to spin my story with their own intentions to drive their own traffic or whatever. So I thank you for what you're doing, Chris. You talk about art therapy program you have for veterans, and that leads probably into the screenwriting course that you're going to put on. So let's talk about all that stuff that you're doing to give back to the veteran community, not just making films, not approaching making films from like this polymath standpoint where I want to learn everything I can and get it as close to right as I can. But what are you personally doing to kind of facilitate healing in the veteran community?
Yeah, well, the art therapy program my wife and I created, and so I'll tell. It's kind of interesting how that came about. So, like, basically, when my dad died, he left sort of this building in Dallas for my brother and sister and I that went into like probate, and there was like a gold digger involved, and the city of Dallas against us, and like back taxes and all this stuff, and so.
Just a big headache.
It, yeah, big headache. And my dad left us like a mess, when he left us, and a legal mess just everywhere. And so he left the building in the name of a foundation to make things worse. And so basically, in order to take the building back, we had to dissolve the foundation and don't. And part of the settlement was that we have to donate. We have to donate money to charities, like to 3 charities. And the judge in Dallas was going to pick who those charities were, and I was like,
No, you're not.
no, no, because she told us who she was going to pick, and and I was like, no. So my brother picked one, my sister picked one, and then I picked one. So I wanted to make sure that I donated to something veteran related, and there was like nothing in Dallas, and I wanted it to be something to do with the arts, and so there was an art therapy program that had done a little bit of veterans related stuff, and I called them. I said, "Look, I'm going to give you some money, but you got to expand your veteran program. You got to make it a thing. You got to put it on your website." And this money has to absolutely go towards art therapy and veterans, and they did. And so I kind of like, my wife and I kind of, with our money, created that program. So that's just how that started, and I got to go back to them and see how they're doing. And then so the other thing I'm doing is I have a film school that I'm creating. It's sort of like an online program, but there's going to be in-person part of this also. So ChristopherMartini.com is, you can go there and put in your email address, and if you're interested in, I'm doing the screenwriting course right now. So there's going to be veteran and first responder discounts. And I'm partnering now with a ranch in New Mexico that has like 170 acres, or just like an incredible spread where we can actually go and film and do the physical classes. So there's going to be sort of an online part and then the physical part. And you can kind of attend either. And then but in both instances, we're going to be training veterans to make movies. Because what I've found is like, veterans, cops, first responders are sort of like the most qualified people to work in the film industry, in my opinion, because you show up on time, you don't complain, you can work through the elements, and you guys have incredible stories to tell. As I said, now have a crew that's made up of almost all military people that I take from project to project, and many of them I trained myself, and who had no experience. So this film school is going to be sort of an extension of that, and we're going to make movies on this ranch. They have like an old western town, and it's going to be incredible. And
Well, I think this is
so
amazing
I'm
because
partnering with a guy named Jonathan Delaney Marsh, who's out there in New Mexico, and he's going to be sort of the physical end of this. So, like in the online courses, you're going to see us making films, and eventually, I'm going to be walking veterans through the program, sort of shepherding them to help teach them how to, tell your stories, to get what's in here up on the screen, and make that work, in the form of a real movie.
dude, I think this is incredibly genius because I started this podcast in May and it has done wonderful things for me. It is a video podcast that goes on YouTube. There's no special editing that goes into it. Literally, like when I edit this, I'll just cut out the parts where I'm not talking and where you're not talking, put them together. It'll flip back and forth. But what I think is so genius about this is making film is so much more accessible to everyone now, right? Because we basically have high speed cameras in our pocket. Technology, drones, everything is so accessible. And I think really all we need is the guidance. I figured out how to edit my own podcast. I know how to do a little bit of layering and some graphics effects or some motion graphics or whatever. Not anywhere close to like a professional level, but I taught myself because the resources are online, YouTube University for one, but just having access to all of this, I can shoot a video right now, put it together, get some B-roll, cram all that together and put out social media posts. And I think all we need is a little bit of direction. I agree with you. Putting that team of veterans together is genius on your part because it helps you keep the continuity when you're making your films. You also get what you're looking for out of employees or people to help you build your vision because we will work through the elements. We will show up on time. We won't bitch about, well, we'll probably bitch about it, but a bitching soldier is a happy soldier is what I always say, and we're just disciplined and can take direction. Like we are very aware of what we don't know and you're trying to give us that direction. Chris says, go, I go. This is what he wants me to do. I may not understand it, but an order is an order. So I think this is awesome, man. And I'm really excited, like particularly your screenwriting course. I think that's been the hardest part for me. I've been challenged a couple of times to get into public speaking, to write a book. I'm not a writer. I don't enjoy it. I'm a voice notes guy. That's just kind of what I do. Part of it's because I can't read my own handwriting. Part of it's because writing for me is just boring. I feel like I can't grab the words I'm trying to find when I'm writing versus when I'm talking to my phone. And so, I was challenged last week to start writing a book, and I actually did start writing that book. I've got 9,000 words at this point, and it's actually been really cathartic, and it's opened something up for me. And so, I just think what you're doing is amazing, man. And I can't give you enough praise because there needs to be more people with your background who can give that guidance and direction because all of this, I'm just convinced telling our stories is how we heal.
The screenwriting part of it, that's the first course. So, there's going to be a screenwriting, producing, directing, editing, shooting, sound, everything, sound mixing. Like, there's going to be a course for everything. But I'm doing the hardest one first, which I love because like there's so much emphasis on form and not on content, so if you Google online film school, you're going to get like a bunch of like these guys who can shoot really slick looking commercials and weddings and all this kind of stuff, but like there's not many that are like telling stories. So the emphasis should be on the script, right? You know, because and that's the hardest one to do. And so I've been doing this for 30 years, and to be honest with you, I couldn't write I still, I struggle when I'm writing, you know, like it took me forever to kind of figure out how this machine works, you know. Very early on, you know, I went to NYU, I made these sort of like student films, and I was working professionally as an editor while I was at NYU, even before. And I went to this really experienced editor and I showed him my student film, and he was like, Chris, yeah, I could tell he thought it sucked, but I'll never forget. He said, "Chris, you know, movies are about telling stories." And what he was telling me is that I didn't tell a story. It was just sort of like a collection of images. So you know, it took me 30 years to come up with a system for writing, and I read, like, you know, all the big books or whatever, and I had to come up with something that worked so that I was able to figure out sort of a process to get all this stuff in here and like organize it. And it's all about the craft, like where you put all those ideas and how you structure it and contain it, and coming. And so this course is going to be deep, man. It has a whole system for how to, you know, I'm taking like little bits from all these different places that I learned, and, you know, putting it into this one thing that I think works for me, that'll work for other people too, you know.
That's awesome, brother. So let's get into the controversial part here. Like, it's no secret that you did a film called The Man You Didn't Know in record time, that got shared 54 million times because Elon Musk kind of boosted it, which is awesome for you. This is kind of the part of why I created this show, right? Everybody experiences a great transition in their life, and particularly this day and age, it's not easy to make a transition like you make, to make a film about such a divisive man, or whatever the word is for Donald J. Trump, our 47th president of the United States, whether you like it or not. You know, we're all adults. We do this every 4 years, but this is a lot of controversy. You will get a lot of hate for this. This could have absolutely ruined your career. You know, I mean, given what we know about Hollywood, and I don't think that's a big secret to anybody listening to the show. So talk about the transition into first basically creating this movie on, it sounds like, short notice, or how did all this come about, and how was that transition for you, and how did you get over all of those things to rest on your core values, beliefs, and passions to make this film and have so much success?
So, I mean, it started with 9/11, you know. So, and then, but I was a Democrat first, and then, you know, but when Trump came into office in 2016, I switched parties, and because I think what you know what happened to me was that I realized that he like a lot of people were coming in against him suddenly. And if I just realized, if they're coming against this guy so hard and they loved him like the day before he decided to run, then any intelligent person can figure out that this guy is sort of like waking a very sort of evil machine or beast or something, right? And I think that's kind of what happened. And then, you know, and then, you know, a lot of people, including myself, started to reveal themselves when he was in office. And so I'm learning more about sort of like the corruption and the hate, and sort of like what's driving people, and sort of like the the cultural institutions that could make or break my career, how they were sort of being controlled by these sort of gatekeepers. And these gatekeepers were sort of like, it had an agenda. And it was only then did I really realize what their agenda was. And then, so in 2019, at COVID, I had a really successful production company in Midtown Manhattan. We were doing like corporate videos, but we were making a lot. We were making a lot of money. I had enough to make my own movies and stuff during that time. And when COVID hit, I had to shut it down because our clients just went dry. But so my partner and I, we had all this camera gear. We had two of everything. So we're like, all right, we'll just split everything. So during COVID, I was just looking at all my camera gear, and I'm like, I got to do something. So I said, I'm going to start shooting documentaries, because I started doing narrative films. And I had done a couple documentaries, but then I was like, documentaries are cheap. This is something I can do just with me in the pandemic. And um, so George Floyd riots, just all this, our country's sort of burning.
Yeah,
and
literally
and
burning.
and but the thing that got me was the cops. I like, I didn't like seeing our cops belittled and destroyed, and just that whole institution destroyed. And so, because a lot of cops are veterans, and I just know that they're putting their life on the line just like our military does. So that kind of hit me hard, and it just made me reassess all my values, and it just like, I want. Sorry, my baby's
No,
crying.
you're good, brother.
But
If
don't
you need
worry,
to
my
go take care
wife's
of it, we can
no,
pause
no,
it.
no. My wife's going. But but basically, I was like, look, I feel like I'm more of a conservative than anything, because I you know all the things that conservatives are. I don't have to list them. I just know. But I also like wanted to get closer to my faith, and I just like, I wanted to sort of restore all the things that my grandfather fought for, that I felt were being sort of like, taken apart. And so, my landlord, who's a conservative, said, he lives in Staten Island, and he's a Trump supporter. It's kind of funny. And um, he's my landlord here in Brooklyn, but he lives in Staten Island. He's like, you got to go interview Scott Lebedo. So, because I was doing, I said, I'm going to do like a conservative series, and I don't even care where it goes. I'm just going to start shooting interviews. So I was filming like conservative reporters, and just like important people in the conservative movement. And Scott was sort of like going to be one of these interviews for this series that I was doing. And then, so I interviewed Scott, and it's like 3 hour interview, and he had me sort of laughing, crying, angry, like sort of every human emotion possible. And then he was like, well, I need a documentary. So I said, okay, well, I'll do it. We made a little deal, and so I filmed Scott Lebedo for 3 or 4 or 5 years, like 3 or 4 years. And then what happened was, we, put this movie together. It was really good. And it spoke to all the things that concern me. Like, Scott protests for not only veterans. He won the VFW Americanism Award. He's done a lot for veterans, law enforcement, standing up for the flag, and just his craziness, and all his, like, sort of the controversial stuff that he does, and his protests, and his pranks, and his sense of humor. He's just like a good, crazy guy, a good subject for a documentary. So, but I didn't even know where the hell I was going to get this documentary scene. And so enter this another Italian, Joshua Machello, who's a producer and has a studio, Global Ascension Studios. So this is where things started to shift here for me, because what Josh did was, he basically, he came in for finishing funds on this movie. He gave us the money to finish it, and then he got us a premiere at Mar-a-Lago, where Trump was there. And then I was telling myself, now everybody knows who I am. There's no going back after this film.
Yep.
Um, Josh is sort of a conservative. Global Essentials is sort of like this conservative studio. They're going to take over Hollywood, and Josh got, I don't know how he did it, but he got this film in like 1,000 theaters across the country. And so and now we're finally getting sort of a streaming deal, because Scott swears a lot. We had a lot of streamers say no, but it's an incredible movie. If you look on Rotten Tomatoes, we got like 97%. We're even up at 98% at one point, which is above Titanic. Even through sort of all the tech censorship, and like everyone was messing with this film. Facebook, Instagram, the movie theaters. Like some people from Hollywood were probably calling the movie theaters saying, "Give this happened with the Trump film, which I'm going to tell you. Like, give this film the worst times in the worst places." Like, and all these funny things happening with the theaters, like kind of like Sound of Freedom.
Yeah, well, yeah, it happened to a lot of other films, right? Like
Yeah,
they would just shut the theater down and just say, "Oh, the camera's broken, we can't play the film," kind of thing.
I'll
Yeah,
tell you a crazy story that happened with the Trump film. I'll get to that in a minute. But basically, people loved this movie. It got them so riled up, like they were cheering and standing and in the movie theaters, people. And so what happened was Josh sort of got the life rights to tell Donald Trump's story, and he asked me to direct it because like kind of like with the Scott film, I took somebody who a lot of people would say is like an unlikable person, and I made him likable, and I made you fall in love with him, right? And that is sort of like what Trump has done to people, right? That's who he is, so
yeah.
so even though they were considering another director at one point, and we did the Trump film with the Trump family. Like
But
they
that was a
were,
cool experience.
yeah, yeah. So they like, Donald Jr., Don Jr., Eric Trump, Lara Trump, Kimberly Guilfoyle, Kai Trump. The whole family was pretty much involved with this film. We made this in participation with them. But and this was sort of like Josh's brainchild, is to do sort of the side of Trump that people don't know. So like, look, he's a human being. He made mistakes. He's done stupid things. Who hasn't? We all have, right? But there's all these stories about how Donald Trump has changed people's lives. Like he would sit in the morning and look at the newspaper and figure out who he's going to help each day. And so there's stories of like veterans that he paid for their cancer, that he bought a family farm in Georgia after the father, killed himself because of the mortgage, and he saved that farm and gave it back to the family, and just stuff like that. And like Google was actually taking down the articles of the good things that he did, because there was like stuff that he did that we couldn't find, right? And so like, so that's sort of like the angle of it. And then, I got a lot of hate for that movie. Like I got hate mail from people in the industry. But the thing is, like, my dad was an Italian sculptor from Rome. He didn't care about anybody. So he taught me at a very early age, in the arts, you need to have a thick skin. And, so that stuff just, it rolls off of me so easily, and I love it. I love it. Just keep it coming. It makes me want to do it even more,
It's fuel.
and yeah, it's fuel. It's like, I need you to say that, so
Yeah.
like, the stuff that I don't trust is when someone says something good about it, but like, so a lot of people were accusing this movie of being like propaganda, and in some instances it was, because our premise was that he's a good guy. Our premise is that this guy is a good guy and he's been completely demonized by the media. That's our premise. We're going to prove it. I'm going to show you that he's a good guy, and that's what we did in the movie. So, to say it's propaganda is not completely accurate, because we told a dialectical story. The dialectic is that through conflict, whenever Donald Trump did something, he was encountered forces of opposition greater than he could ever imagine. That's the story. Like once he entered politics, actually, even in his business career, so many people came up against him, and this guy just kept on going. He's the ultimate hero for, mythical archetypal hero. He has somehow he been able to go through each obstacle, greater and greater obstacle, and look, he just won. We just, like, the majority of the country just said, we want this guy that you hate so much, and so anyways, to me, and so the end of this little story is that um, same thing happened to us in the theaters. I have a really short, crazy story about what happened. I got an so we every day Josh and I would get emails from people saying, "Hey, I just saw the movie in so and so town, and all this weird stuff was happening. Like, there's no poster, the volume was low, they didn't have it advertised, or just weird stuff." But this woman from Maui, who was actually a really smart woman, a PhD psychologist or something like that, sent me an email and said, "Look, I got to tell you, I just saw your film, the Trump film, The Man You Don't Know, in a theater in Maui, and when I got to the theater said that it was sold out. But when I got inside, there was nobody in there." And then gets even weirder. And they're like, then all of a sudden, two women show up and sit behind us, and they're heckling us the whole time. And the two women heckling the other two women got out of their seats and were like going up and down the aisle, sort of harassing them, and sprayed some kind of aerosol at them. And then, and it basically told the manager didn't do anything. And then after the movie theater said that it was never sold out to begin with. So then it led the woman to think that maybe somebody sort of hacked into the computer system or bought all the tickets, or just weirdness. So she went on the news. We were both on Newsmax, and all these other a lot of media outlets picked up this story because just weird stuff happening, because no one wanted this movie to come out before the election. A movie that put Donald Trump in a positive light, they didn't want it to come out before the election, right? So now, this is sort of the genius of my producer Josh, who, God willing, we're going to keep working together. He's got some projects for me. Great guy, conservative, and so he went and he after this movie he talked to X, he talked to Elon Musk's people, and he put the whole movie on X for free, basically, because he wanted eyes on it. We wanted eyes on it before the election, right? And so we got, I think, 45 million views because Elon Musk and Benny Johnson shared it right before the election. So there's no doubt that it influenced the election somewhat. And I think we're up to about 75 million views now. And we were approached by the three biggest streaming companies. I'll let you guess who they are, and
I'm sure. I'm sure.
we're working out a deal with one of them now. So the incredible thing about this story is that, and I believe this, that, and it goes back to sort of like any religion teaches the same thing. Is just, well, most religions do teach the same things, that if you give, you will get back,
Tenfold. Yep.
in tenfold in the kingdom of heaven, or whatever. So Josh put this out for free. He just gave it to the country, even though we have investors, and I'm sure they were like, "What the hell are you doing?" But when you do that, then God will come back and he will provide. And he did, because we were approached by the streaming company. We're working out a deal now. And, it's the same thing with my career. Yes, you said, I could have ended it, but I feel like, when you risk something like you guys did every day, when you sacrifice and you risk something, and you put all your faith in God to provide, even though it's scary. I mean, every day I have to say, God, I trust you. I'm just going to lean into you for everything. That if you like, that's the whole trick. I think if you can do that, like if you take the safe route you know. So I'll let you know how it works out, but I'm feeling pretty good about it, you
I
know.
think you're going to be okay, brother. You got a quarter of the country to watch your movie on Twitter, and now you're working with the three largest streaming companies to get a deal together. I think it's going to work out for you, man. Christopher, I'm so grateful for your time today, man. I know you're a busy man. I'm super grateful to have gone to ORWF with Luke, who made the introduction for us. I know he's doing some
I
work with.
love Luke.
Oh, he's great, man. He's
Uh,
and what's great about him is I showed up to that retreat kind of on my own, and Luke and I are actually born and raised in the same town, which was really cool. So, I'm just grateful that he made the introduction. I love what you're doing. I love, like I said before we started recording, I followed your brother's work for a long time. Had no idea this was like a family affair, and it's just funny how the universe kind of puts people in your path, and then we end up getting to do stuff like this. I'm very grateful for you spending time with us today. I want you to please let everybody know where they can go get a hold of you, take advantage of your screenwriting courses, your art, stuff. I assume it's just your website, but I'll let you put that out there, brother.
yeah. Well, it's Art Therapy Dallas. They're doing a program with veterans. Definitely mention my name. I think that my logo should be on their website. But yeah, no, that's definitely, drawing, painting, any kind of visual arts is good with dealing with trauma. But making a movie, man, that to me, that's the best way to deal with trauma. So, because it like filmmaking is can be really stressful, and it gets that adrenaline going, and I just like I go into a depression when I finish making a movie, because it's just like it's go go go. It's not going to be this exactly the same as being deployed and that kind of adrenaline, but it kind of close, and you get to kind of shape all this crazy stuff in your head and turn it into something powerful. And like as you're making it, you're teaching yourself how to live again, and get active and involved. So it's a positive thing. So ChristopherMartini.com, just put in your info and give me a little time. I'm editing these tutorials, but the screenwriting class is going to be up, and then I'm going to be in a rhythm, and then there's going to be more courses. Follow me on Instagram, Triple Martini Prod, PROD. That's it, and
Awesome, brother. I really appreciate it. Hey, what do you have coming out here soon? I know you're working on another film, or you have an idea for another film, don't you?
oh, I mean, so yeah, no, wow. I've got, I got so many. I'm working on a project with Dave Bray, who's a veteran musician. That's going to be a narrative story, a fictional story. And I'm talking to Jessica Lynch about doing her story, and I'm hoping we move on that soon. And I've got a cooking show with veterans that I'm about to get green lit at a network. So God willing, that happens soon, because that's going to be incredible. And oh, what else? Yeah,
Brother, if you
just
can ever find time in your busy schedule, there needs to be a film about the veteran transition. And I'd love to be a part of that if we could ever make it happen, because it's kind of my whole thing right now. And it's probably the biggest weak point I've identified for us transitioning out. And I'm just,
yeah.
just tossing it out there, no expectations, but it would be really cool to do something like that.
Yeah, that true. That's what Trooper was to some extent, but like, I mean, that is a continuously evolving story, and that is the big weakness right now in our military system. So we need. I'd be happy to tackle that with you. If anything to help, people coming home, but we also have to boost recruitment. I
Yeah,
mean,
absolutely.
I think we I, we need to figure out how to take out this wokeness in the military, and just we want people to want to defend our country, but we don't want them to get us, we don't want to send our children into wars that are pointless, so it's just there's a lot that we still have to do, and we got
Absolutely.
to get a lot of people in the VA got to go, and there's some good people there, but so there's still a lot to work on.
Hell yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mr. Christopher Martini from Triple Martini Productions, film director, actor, producer, all of it, you name it. In the film industry, he's done it. Please like, rate, review, subscribe, and download. Help me get this in front of 1 million veterans before I turn 40 on May 9th, 2025. I say it every time, it's a lofty goal, but there's 19 million veterans in the United States. If you would all just watch this, take 2 seconds to share it, we can accomplish that goal. Again, Christopher, I'm really grateful for you being here, man. Thank you so much for your time. Until next week, we'll see you with another banger. Ladies and gentlemen, take care. That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at The Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity, or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources, or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.